Hey, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. We still see some people joining into the webinar here, so we're going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then we will get started. So thank you very much. Oh, all right. So it looks like the attendees are settling down a little bit. I want to thank you for joining us today. We do this bi-weekly webinar on Domotz. Today we've changed it up a little bit. We're going to see how this goes, but before we get into the agenda, let's talk about a housekeeping item here, and that is questions. If you guys have questions regarding our webinar, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar control panel and type your questions there. We do have a couple of our team members standing by to answer questions. If we can answer it live, or if they can answer it quickly via a response, they will, but then as we consolidate the questions at the end, we'll have time to ask some of those as well. For more detailed questions, please reach out to support@domotz.com. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let me show you today's agenda, which we structured a little bit differently. We will go over, why Domotz is here, how Domotz works, but then I want to change it up from what we've done in the past. I really want to talk about your problems, not necessarily your social, your family, your other personal problems, but more about you as a service provider, you as an integrator. What are some of the problems that we often get questions about? We're going to talk about how Domotz as a solution helps you solve some of those problems. Things like assessing a customer site. When you're taking over a job, how do you get a good feel for what the network looks like? When you have service level agreements in place, and I do hope that you guys are thinking about service level agreements if you don't already have them in place, but what do you do then? We'll talk a little bit about how Domotz helps you there. And then even when the SLA expires, how do you get them to renew, right? What can Domotz do to help you with that? And then lastly, we'll talk about efficiency and standardization. And I think this is an important aspect, especially for managed service providers. You guys are dealing with lots of different tools that are out there. I want to make sure that you understand how Domotz runs or helps you run your business more efficiently. And then one thing that people are always excited to hear about are what are some of the new features within Domotz that are coming in the integrations. And my colleague Giancarlo will talk about some of that, and then we will get into some question and answers. I haven't had our pictures up before. I'm that guy on the right-hand side. This is JB Fowler, and on the horn here we've got Giancarlo Finelli as well. Giancarlo, why don't you go ahead and say hello?
Hi everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar. Just to confirm, JB. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was not seeing the screen sharing, but now I see that. Thanks.
Oh, thank goodness. If I've been talking this whole time and nobody can see, that would be a terrible thing. Why don't let's look like, well, we got a poll out there, but it looks like it closed pretty quickly if that's the case. We usually are going to see a couple polls throughout the webinar to help get us a feel for, where you guys are coming from and stuff. So we can go ahead and, on the back end, if we want to release some of those polls, we can. Let me first give an overview about what Domotz is. Domotz is a software as a service. We're a cloud-based service. We're fundamentally a tool for you as a service provider or integrator to help run your business more efficiently. And as it says at the bottom, really to help you generate customer loyalty. We do that through things that we're going to talk about today, things like classification and discovery of devices that are on these networks that you're deploying. We're also going to talk about how you can proactively monitor these systems and generate alerts on those. When it comes to the network and monitoring and managing of that, an important aspect is the how you can securely connect to the system to manage all these different devices, whether it's using the device itself and the web interface or the command line interface, or using third-party tools that are used to either program or manage those systems. We'll talk about how you can do that. One of the fundamental tenets of Domotz, of course, is the ability to rapidly deploy these systems into your customers' networks, making it easier and, again, more efficient for you to help manage your customers. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about troubleshooting and what aspects come from that. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about how Domotz works by doing a demo of Domotz itself. So while that's up there, while you guys are doing the poll, let me get the Domotz application up. What you see here on screen is fundamentally our application, what we call this is our desktop app. I'm running on a Mac. There's a Windows version. So one of the three components of the Domotz solution is the application itself. One of the things that I think you'll find very exciting about Domotz is not only do we have a desktop application, but we also have web-based applications. So if you're leveraging a browser on your PC, whether it's Chrome, Safari, Firefox, whatever it is you may use, you can access Domotz through that. You also can access Domotz through mobile applications, both for iOS and Android. So wherever you are, depending on whether you're on the go or not, right, you're going to be able to have access to the Domotz environment. Another key portion, and this is a critical part, and this is where all of our intelligence lies, but it's in the cloud. A lot of people ask us, where's our system hosted? It's actually hosted on AWS. From a technical perspective, we run throughout the world, but we've got two major cells, as we call them. One that runs the North America environment, which includes Canada, US, and Mexico. And then we have a cell out in Europe that runs the rest of the world. And we primarily do that for security purposes, making sure that through regulations like GDPR and systems like that, or security systems and privacy sorts of systems like that, we have it all covered throughout the world. That cloud is the second major part, and as I said, it's what is actually communicating with the application and showing you the status of your systems that you have deployed. In order to deploy a system, you actually need that third piece, which is what we call an agent. The Domotz agent is actually a network-based agent, meaning that it's a single piece of software, a single agent that resides on a local area network that is receiving instructions from the cloud on what to do. That agent can come in the form of a Windows executable that you run on a host machine. It can come in the form of Linux, a Linux variant, whether it's Debian or Ubuntu that you can host on a Linux server of some sort. You also can find Domotz agents on various embedded systems. Those could be NAS drives, it could be Raspberry Pis if you want to go down that route. You also can host or see our agents on certain routers, depending on the environment that you're in. So Luxel is an example of a company that has embedded our agent on their router. We do offer as well a small black box that you can purchase directly through us or through Amazon if you want to have like a smaller, easy to deploy system as well. So you can find that there. The three components that make up the system fundamentally is the cloud, this desktop application that you see on the screen, and that agent. All three components are needed in order to make that work. The screen that you see here on the Domotz desktop app is what we call our NOC view. It is our Network Operations Center. Basically, we tried to make this as simple as possible. It's a multi-tenant view, meaning that you can look at tens, hundreds, even thousands of agents at one time and understand their status through a simple kind of stoplight manner, red, yellow, green, right? If a site is red, it means that the agent is no longer communicating with the cloud. Usually it's due to a power outage or some issue with the ISP, but we're no longer getting updates or status information from that agent, so we flag it as red. When it's green, everything's running kosher, looking good, working as we expect. When it's yellow, that typically means that there's an important device that may be offline, or we possibly found a security issue in there that will flag. The one thing that I want to say in this multi-tenant view is that it's nice, it's simple, it's easy to read, it's easy to navigate. It gets used often by our customers as a marketing tool to show their customers how they are managing their clients' systems. When you get out of this, or when you click on an agent and you get out of that multi-tenant view, you go directly into the devices view. This is where you can start to see what's going on within the network environment and how that system is actually working. We're going to talk a lot more about this as we go through some of the different problems that are out there. But before I dive into that, let's ask ourselves, what are some of the issues that we're dealing with? One of the first ones that I put out there from an agenda perspective is, do you really know what's going on in your customers' environments? Do you know what devices are actually deployed in that system? If you're going out to a job site where it's a takeover job, right? You've worked with, or you've got a new client, they had somebody else do the installs or all the devices out there, but now you need to assess what it is you're walking into before you even do the job. Well, one of the things you need to be able to do is discover all the systems that are out there. Domotz allows you to do this pretty effectively. When you first activate an agent, a Domotz agent on a network, and you associate it to your account in the cloud, the very first thing that we do is we scan that network. For those that are a little bit more technically inclined, I'll tell you we do a layer 2 scan, meaning that we're looking at the VLAN. We're essentially pulling back all of the MAC addresses on these devices. And then what's more powerful is that we're leveraging our sister company, Fing, to do an enrichment of all that data. So we're going to come back and look at these systems, and we're going to give you not only the device MAC address and IP address of these, but we're going to look at the various broadcast layers that are coming out of that device. So host names, zero conf names, whatever else is out there from a network protocol perspective, we're going to show that information. But furthermore, we're going to classify these devices. We're going to tell you the manufacturer or the make of it. We're going to tell you the model if we have that. We're going to tell you the classification of it, meaning, is this device, in this case, a smart power plug? Is it a network switch? Is it a security camera? We're going to give you details around all of the devices that are on the network that we've discovered, so that you don't have to take time figuring out, what are these devices on the network. We're actually going to go as far as looking at the different network infrastructure devices. So if I come up here and grab an example of one, we're going to discover that this is a managed switch and that there are interfaces associated with it. We're going to tell you exactly which ports the various devices that we've discovered are residing on. We're going to give you information like, are they PoE powered? What's the power consumption look like? Over time, we're going to show you information like, what is the average bandwidth being consumed by these particular devices? We're going to give you average bandwidth that we see. Again, all of this is from the perspective of that particular switch in this case, but we're going to show you network information like, are errors being generated on this port, are packets being discarded, things of that nature. All of this is really set up to help you better understand, what do the systems look like, what are the devices that are out there, and if we go as far back as understanding all that, we can now show you a topology and see exactly what does this network look like. You can look at this particular system as a whole. This is a fairly large network with lots of devices on it. But if we collapse it, you can see how simple this looks here. We go in and look at wireless devices as well, so the wireless access points. So in this particular case, we have a Ruckus system. What we can do is, when we click on this, we can show exactly which clients are connected to this particular WAP, what SSIDs they're on, what frequencies or channels that they're running on, which radios, and we can get a lot of information. We also can, when we click on a device, start to look at what are their signal strength as seen by the wireless access point. This all helps you better assess what's going on in this customer's environment and helps you know what problems you may or may not be running into as you start to work with these customers. One thing that always gets asked of us too is, what can I do with respect to different subnets and VLANs? Well, Domotz does absolutely allow you to look at different VLANs. In our with our little black box that we serve up, we can walk you through how to set this up automatically. But you can also, through all the different systems, whether it's Windows or Linux based, right? It's a matter of configuring the NIC to look at the VLANs, and of course configuring the subnets, the managed switches and the ports to look at the different VLAN tags or having the appropriate VLAN tags. But VLANs can be looked at through Domotz, and we can monitor and scan those. You also can configure it to look at separate subnets if you want to do that. In fact, I think in this case, I just configured this today. Sorry, I don't want to look at that. I want to look at SB8200. So here's a modem, right? Modems sit on the outside of a LAN, but you can see where we've configured it to look at this particular subnet. We did a subnet scan of the 168.100 subnet, and it came back with .1 being where this particular modem is sitting. And then we can start to ping it, make sure it's online. We can validate statistics on it. We can even see latency and things like that we'll talk about here in a little bit. So this is just one example of where Domotz has the power to not only look within different VLANs within the local area networks, but also look at subnets and things that are outside the networks. You may have noticed too, and this is a little bit more advanced, but as we look at the devices, you can start to set up external hosts as well. So if you are in a situation, today's world, where you're dealing with work from home or employees that may be in a company that you're managing, but they're working from home, you now can put a Domotz agent at their house, help them manage that network if appropriate, but you can set up things from the point of view of their network where they're looking at different domains. Could be Zoom, could be BlueJeans, it could be whatever that they care to look at. It could be the corporate environment to make sure that they can communicate effectively and that the performance between that home environment and the corporation are performing as expected. So really some good examples about how Domotz can, one, help you assess a customer's environment, but also help you better understand what's going on in the network. Let's talk about another problem that you have. And I brought up the notion about service level agreements. I have to imagine that most of you have SLAs in place, or you're looking at doing that. As you guys know, recurring revenue generated by service level agreements are a great way to help secure your business and also to help raise the value of your business. But one of the things that come with service level agreements are the need to respond to customers in a reasonable amount of time. You also have to realize that when you have multiple SLAs in place, although you may be at the office or although you may be at a particular customer's job site, you still need to manage those other clients effectively. So how do we do that within Domotz? Well, first of all, we talked before about being proactive. One of the important parts of helping you scale with respect to SLAs is making sure you take advantage of alerts, right? Domotz will scan the network, will find all these devices, will find all these systems, but you need to take advantage of the fact that these alerts are here to help you understand which important devices should have alerts and which ones should not. So the first thing that I'll talk about with alerts are the types of alerts that we have here. You can put an alert on the agent itself, which means that we're looking at the network as a whole. First of all, if the agent doesn't communicate with the cloud, it could be a problem with the ISP or a power outage, you can generate alerts on that. From a security perspective, if you want to know when new devices show up in the network, you also can generate alerts on that. We'll talk a little bit later about security issues and how that works, but more importantly, network performance. So if the ISP speed is not behaving as you would expect, you can generate alerts on that. From a device perspective, this is where we have a lot of power. So let's just randomly grab this camera here. So you can set up alerts when the device goes up, when it goes down, if its IP address changes. But more importantly, what you can do is get into the sensors. So what we call SNMP sensors, Simple Network Management Protocol. A lot of network infrastructure devices or PCs and laptops can leverage SNMP to understand the status of those devices in a little bit more better way. So for instance, Cisco switches will have temperature sensors in them that you can read. Embedded devices may put forth their CPU utilization or their memory consumption, and you can trigger alerts off of that by creating SNMP sensors. You also can look at what we call TCP services. So if a PC should always be running RDP or remote desktop protocol, or if an embedded device should always have a web page that's made available, you can set up alerts on that. You can see here with this camera, I've set up an email alert if the port 80 or their HTTP page or service goes down. So that's something that's very possible. You can also, we haven't talked a lot about this yet, but from a network diagnostics perspective, if you see a device's performance from a latency or response time perspective going down, you can generate alerts on that. This is really critical for systems that like voice over IP systems or unified communications. So this is something that you guys can start to set up to help really address these service level agreements that you have, making sure that the systems are any system that goes down gets an alert on that. Let me take some time here to talk a little bit about what happens when an alert occurs. So when all of a sudden a system goes down and you get an alert around that, what do you do? Well, one of the things you can, in fact, I'll go back to this camera. So here we're in this device. Let's say it got a trouble system, a ticket was generated because of this. What we can do is actually connect to this. One of the things that Domotz does when it scans the network and scans for the devices, we also look at which ports are available for management on these devices. On this particular device, you can see we've automatically found port 80 and port 8000 being the ports that are available for management. But if you have a device that can use SSH or Telnet or even RDP, we're going to discover those ports and make those available. If you want to create a custom connection, so I mentioned before, if you have a system that leverages a third-party tool to program that device or to manage it in some way, you can create that custom connection. It's a very secure connection that will allow you to copy and paste the URL that we make available to that tool, and then you can have that secure connectivity. It's encrypted, it's going over the Domotz system, it's using the Domotz credentials that you have, so you know it's your team members making those questions. And we're also going to talk about here in the next section, it also records and logs the access that's being made there, which is useful for auditing purposes. Now I did mention tickets, right? Opening tickets. One thing I should say about alerts is that while you can generate push notifications to your phone and email alerts to the account you're logged in on, you also can create alerts that will automatically open up tickets inside various PSA or professional service administration tools. This is a way in which we help you run your business more efficiently as well. We know that you are leveraging a tool, a PSA tool, whether it's a service like AutoTask or ConnectWise or Fresh Service, Q360s, those that are shown here. Maybe you're using more of a communication tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Right? We have ways of pushing these types of alerts and notifications based on events that you've set up in Domotz into these systems that you're using, helping you be more efficient. The nice thing about the integration that we've done with these tools is that when a device on the network triggers a ticket for whatever reason, we give you all the information about that device, about the site that it's on, the time frame that it was caused. And then if we have had a ticket opened in the past for that same event, we track that history and we will bring that history back up. In fact, we'll even reference the old ticket that was created. And to ensure that we're not overburdening the ticketing system, we're using intelligence to see that if a ticket was opened already and the event happens a second time while that ticket remains open, we're not going to open up another ticket for you. We're just going to log that into the history and you'll be able to then go see what's going on with this particular device. Because you probably, or your support team lives in the ticketing system more often than they live in the Domotz interface, we provide a link inside the ticket as well that takes you directly to that system. So I think that this is a great way to improve the way in which you guys are working, and it helps you manage these SLAs that you're dealing with and these service agreements that you have in place with your clients. You also can see that when one of these tickets get open, how you can remotely connect into the system and then deal with the devices that are there. Let's see. Oh, one thing I wanted to talk about as well, and this goes along with helping manage your customer systems. Let's go back out to our agents and let's look at this particular system here. One of the things that we see from service providers and integrators is they will often be dealing with managed switches. One of the ways in which we help with understanding what's going on in the system is to look at the network infrastructure and look at how these devices are configured. Here I have a Cisco switch, an SG350 series. What we are doing is we're constantly looking at the running configuration. And if the running configuration changes, we will save that configuration off to our cloud, but then we make it so that we can alert you to say, hey, this configuration has changed. And then you can compare the configuration file so you can better understand what changed. But we take it a step further, and I'm pretty certain that all of you from a problem perspective have dealt with this at one point or another, but you have gone out, made a change to the running configuration, and then you've left. And then all of a sudden a power cycle occurs. Well, all of a sudden you have a misalignment. The startup configuration is different from the running configuration, and because of that power cycle, it reverted back to the startup configuration. We can alert you to when a misalignment occurs, so that way you can go off and save that. So another benefit of what we're doing here with this network infrastructure configuration management is really the ability to save off these configurations. So if you're going and repeating the same type of setup at different jobs, you now have a template that you can use or at least start from to help you with your customers' systems. So I wanted to make sure that I showed this to you as well, because I think this configuration management is a powerful tool within Domotz. Let's talk about another problem that we pose that I think you guys are dealing with, and it's really about how can you be more efficient, right? How can you manage all of your clients in the same way? I'm going to tell you one of the things that you fundamentally need to do, and where we've seen service providers and integrators yield the best results when it comes to efficiency is when they do standardize on the set of tools that they use. We believe that Domotz has been set up at a price point that helps you put a Domotz agent into every single job, right? So at $19 a month, it's very easy for you to deploy a Domotz agent everywhere in every job that you do, so you can have these types of consistent results, right, or consistent systems that are out there. We think it's much more cost effective than other systems that are out there. The other thing that you'll see with Domotz as it relates to being more efficient and helping you manage all of your customers in the same way is we've added this global management feature. You now can go in and search for various keywords across all the agents that you have in a system. So here I just put the word main. It's a random word that I type, but anywhere that you see the word main in the device or in a particular environment. So here in the IoT lab, you don't see the word main in the name, but what you do see is that their bonjour name and the zeroconf name broadcast out as main. If you wanted to go back and isolate this a little bit further, we've got advanced searching capabilities. So if we wanted to say that everywhere with the main, but the make is Apple, we can then search for those devices across all these environments. And now we can start to make adjustments as appropriate. The beauty of this is if I wanted to, let's get out of this and let's remove all. Let's say I want to do something much more relevant, such as Cisco switches here. So I can find Cisco, actually let's use IP phones. So I can select the Cisco phone that's in our system. Domotz here in this global management tool sees all of the device settings as well as the properties that are associated with this particular device. We can look at things like how often are we polling or checking this device for uptime? Do we have SNMP sensors configured? Do we have shared alerts configured for these devices? We can look down at the properties such as the names. We can look at what are the customer information that may be associated with it if we look at the agent level. But what we can do is actually export. Once we have let's think of it as a gold site or a template site that we want to copy, we can actually extract this information from this particular device. And then if we wanted to go apply that to this particular phone, we could go import all of those settings. So that way we have consistent behavior. I think if we were to look at probably this switch here, I suspect that we will see that we have some shared alerts associated with this. Well, not on this one, but we do have sensors that are associated with it. So if we had common sensors set up, common alerts set up, we can copy those from site to site and then deploy them very rapidly to multiple sites. This is also really beneficial in helping us understand when we have a particular system that we've deployed on all of our customer sites, that all of a sudden the manufacturer releases a new firmware update. Now I have a way in which I can go get an inventory or an assessment of all the sites that I need to go to. And then if I can do a firmware update remotely through Domotz, I can start to push those types of configurations and updates through the secure connectivity that we showed previously. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview about how global management can help you, and you can see how this is helpful to you as a service provider in your environment. Let's talk a little bit more about, just looking at my agenda here, I want to talk about some of the things that we haven't gone into details on here. So one thing is when you are dealing with customers, one of the problems that we see integrators having, especially, well, I should say more service providers having, is how can they build up a larger revenue stream? One of the things that you can do within Domotz is start looking at the different systems and start looking at, are these systems that I can start to, let's say, capitalize on? Most service providers are out there dealing with the network infrastructure. They're putting on Office 360 onto laptops, PCs, they're managing antivirus. Well, in all these businesses, they're also having to deal with audio video systems, whether it's digital signage, whether it's security cameras, whether it's unified communication systems. All of those are money-making opportunities because those are all extremely important systems to the business owner or to the business itself in helping them run more efficient. When it comes to security cameras, it's quite interesting because if you're in a regulated industry, usually you need to have cameras on 24/7. If you're just a business that has cameras deployed throughout parking lots or inside inside the company, it's usually for insurance purposes in case there's ever a break-in or a slip and fall type issue at the front door. You can leverage Domotz to make sure that these systems are always online. We're going to do our normal network thing, making sure that that device is seen by the network and that it's pinging it. We're going to get its performance. We're going to look at that. We're going to show the bandwidth like we talked about before. But what I think is really cool with security cameras in particular is that we have the ability to grab a snapshot from this. It's one thing to ping the device, right, and see that it's online. It's another thing to be able to show your customer a report that says this device is not only online, but it's streaming video and it's functioning properly. You can see we can capture the date and time. In fact, you as an integrator, if you want to extend it further, you actually can get a streaming image. It's not a high quality, high resolution, but at least it does show that the camera is alive and functioning properly. So we think that this is a really valuable tool for you as a service provider to add these types of monitoring capabilities, advanced monitoring capabilities, so you can build a further revenue stream off of this. In instances where you may be dealing with retail establishments, and they have digital menus, or they may have digital signage throughout the place. You actually can go into some of the more advanced systems like Wirestorm. Liberty AV has the same capabilities, but being able to look at how are the video encoders and decoders communicating together across the network. We think this is a really powerful way in which you can see that, okay, this system is working properly. This is usually more interesting when you have multiple displays looking at one encoder. You can see the path being drawn, but this is a great way that if a customer calls up, one of your clients calls up from a sports bar and they say, hey, this particular TV isn't working, you guys can take a look at this right off the bat and say, okay, that device doesn't seem to be communicating properly. Let me go in and power cycle it, or let me go in and reset the system. Speaking of power cycling, it's very important to note, in fact, you may see this as you look at the topology map. You'll see devices here that may have a power symbol associated to it. Well, one of the things that Domotz can do is, if you have PDUs, or power distribution units, configured in the system, you can go in and associate the devices that we've mapped on the network to outlets within the PDU. Here you can see that this is a television that is tied to outlet 2. I could go and issue a power cycle here if I wanted to do that. One of the most common ways to troubleshoot a system, especially when you're trying to do it quickly, is to power cycle that system and see if it comes back alive, right? You can do that remotely, whether you're at another job site, whether you're on site, whether you're at your office, you can do that. Same thing for PoE-based devices. So in this particular case, if we look at this wireless access point, we can see that it's associated to a managed switch here, but it's consuming 5 watts, and I can power cycle that thing here as well. So power cycling is a very important way in which we help solve problems quickly. Now, I'm not an advocate always for, as an engineer, for just power cycling things randomly, but if you start to see things getting power cycled more and more, that's a sign that you need to look at this system in a little bit more detail. One problem that I glossed over and I want to touch on is, when you guys have SLAs in place and that it's coming up on that 12-month agreement where you need to get back to that customer, how do you manage that? How do you get them back into your camp? How do you renew that SLA for another 12 months? One of the very important parts of that is reporting, right? We believe that you should be communicating with your clients on a very regular basis. In fact, you'll notice that Domotz has the ability to generate reports on demand, or you can automatically generate reports for the last 30 days and have that automatically sent to your clients. You can put in information, or you can customize these reports. You can add details about the agent. You can add details about the devices that are there. You also can add information like about your company. So you can add your logo, you can add how to contact you, but you're also, inside these reports, you can show exactly what you guys have done or how you've monitored and managed the system over the last 30 days as well. Here, because this is a demo site, you can see all the different accesses that I do in my environment, but I can also see when my colleagues, like here's where Giancarlo happened to get into this system and create a secure tunnel, right? But what we do is we log which team member gets associated to, or accesses the system, I should say, what time they did it, date and time, and then what they accessed. Now, in instances where we create a secure connection, in fact, I'll just go do it now for demonstration purposes. Let's go to one of these managed switches. So if I connect directly to this device's web page, so what Domotz is doing right now is creating this secure connection. Let's see if I remember my password. Okay, So now I'm remotely connected to this IoT lab and this particular switch. So you can see how I can go do things like manage a VLAN if that's what I needed to do, right? But if I go back to our reports and log within this system, we should see that, yep, I just made this secure connection directly to port 80. Now, the one thing that you will not see us doing is I'm not going to understand, or Domotz is not going to know what configuration changed inside that unless I did, of course, in a managed switch like this Luxel or a Cisco switch. I might, if I change the configuration, we'll log that under the configuration management. But if I'm in a security camera or I'm in some other device, we're not going to actually log what changes because it's a secure transaction. We don't know anything about that. And that's okay, right? But what your customer cares about, what you should care about, is you know exactly who on your team made an access to the system, and your customer knows that you guys are getting in there and monitoring the system. Even when nothing goes wrong in a system, you should be having conversations with your customers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the recovery paradox, but one of the things that I think is really valuable is understanding this. The recovery paradox says that over time, your customer's loyalty is going to continue to grow as long as you continue to operate in the same manner that you are today. Where it gets interesting is if something goes wrong. So if an event occurs here that causes a problem, your customer's system goes down or an important device goes down, right? All of a sudden their loyalty drops, right? But this is where you as a service provider, you as an integrator have a lot of power in your hands. Depending on how you react to this issue, the paradox says that if you react in an effective and efficient way, the customer loyalty will actually go up more than what it would have been had there never been an incident at all. I'm certainly not advocating for you guys to go out and create a whole bunch of incidents on your customers' networks, but it is important to say that with a tool like Domotz, right, you're going to be able to help manage and better respond to problems on the network, making this a very valuable tool for you and your clients. So I wanted to make sure that you guys think about this. You think about how a tool like this can help you exceed your customers' expectations when problems happen. We all know that problems will happen. It's a matter of what tools do you have in place to respond to them effectively and quickly. So that being said, I appreciate you guys taking the time to look at this demo here. What I want to do now is give Giancarlo a bit of a chance to think about what options or what features are coming our way. Giancarlo, maybe you also got some questions along the way about some things, but do you want to address some of the newer features that we have coming up first?
Absolutely, absolutely. I will cover the new feature very soon. Firstly, as you mentioned, we received many questions during this webinar, and I would like to cover some of them. The first one was from Jess, about any integration, and you showed some of integration with the ticketing system, PSA tools, which is great, and I will cover that part. I will mention what is next in terms of what other integration we're working on. Jess was particularly interested in having an integration with IT Glue, and I'm just sharing this question because it's very recurrent. Every single webinar we have people asking for new integration, and particularly with IT Glue. And it's worth to mention that we can work on some part of the integrations, especially the ticketing system. When it goes to the documentation system like IT Glue, a proper integration needs to be done from the documentation system point of view. And as a matter of fact, we have similar system that integrates with Domotz. I would like to mention IT Portal, but a company like Cloud Radial is looking into that one, and other similar tools that leverage the information that can be extracted from Domotz into their system. They are working in integrating into that one. So to answer to the question is basically we need IT glue to start working into that. So and the more people ask IT glue to look into that, the sooner they will complete their work. They are interested in doing that, but they need to prioritize among all the other things that they have to develop, and we do the same, no? So I understand that the more people can ask for a Domotz integration, the sooner they will do that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there was another question about an integration with Synchro MSP, and this brings me to what's next. So Paul was asking about configuration, an integration with the Synchro MSP for the ticketing part or the PSA part. This is really coming very soon. We have a good relationship with Synchro MSP. We got all the information to work on that plan, and the team is already working on that. So the expectation is that we will have in production the Synchro MSP integration in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks from now, probably, yeah, 2 weeks and 1 day. Basically, we should release on Wednesday. Having said that, let me mention what is really next. Oh, sorry. Another question I had today is very interesting, is from Robert. He was asking, how can I start managing a client with multiple sites? JB, do you want to give an overview of that? I want to add something there, but basically we have. Yeah,
so the question, Giancarlo, if I understood you correctly, is that if I have a customer that has multiple sites, how can I leverage Domotz for that? Correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we actually have quite a few customers that a great example, and probably a simple example to understand, would be a franchisee. So if you're running a franchise of some sort, maybe it's a local McDonald's, right, or Burger King, or some retail establishment where you have multiple stores, right, and you have a customer that has 3 or 4 of these, it's actually very easy to deploy a Domotz agent at each site. And then based on this knock view, my recommendation, of course, would be to name the sites accordingly. Franchisee store number 1, franchisee store number 2, right? So that way they filter effectively up here. We do have some things on our roadmap to be able to help group sites. We also have some more advanced tools in place that we typically don't show, but if you're interested, reach out to sales@domotz.com, where we can give you more information about another higher level hierarchy that gives you broader reaching capabilities as well. For 90, let's even say 95% of our customers, the structure that we put in place and putting an agent at each individual site is very possible. Giancarlo, do you want to speak to how you can leverage a single Domotz agent across multiple sites, but what are some of the limitations if we don't utilize the VLAN monitoring side of it? Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, you partially mentioned during the presentation, but basically the Domotz agent is capable also to monitor a layer 3 connection, which is basically a connection that you can create with a VPN. If you have cross sites VPN connection, you can basically monitor the other side of the connection with this, what JB is showing there with the configured subnet. The limitation there is that being only a layer 3 kind of scanning methodology, you have only the IP address of the other remote network and not the MAC address of those devices. So that's a kind of limitation. But one thing I want to mention about multiple site customer is you showed JB in the manage side. There is a way to search for multiple devices. But there is also a way to search across multiple agents, and that's where basically if you have customer, you can search for a specific customer ID. You have the possibility to configure in Domotz a specific agent belongs to a specific customer. You can put a generic customer ID, and if you click on the advanced search, you can search for that customer ID.
Yeah, I click on this.
Yeah, so and I mean this demo is based on like 5 or 6 agents only, but imagine you have in the advanced search, imagine you have hundreds or even thousands of sites you monitor. You can group all of them by selecting specific customer ID or by contract ID or even by customer name, whatever you prefer to group the sites the sites for the same customer.
It's a great point, Giancarlo, because in this example, let's say we had a customer that had these two sites, and all of a sudden they changed the name of their store, right? We now can put, demo site number 42, right? That's the name of their store, right? When we apply that, now both sites have taken on that name. It's a great way to change it, right? It's simple, fast, and we can do that.
Absolutely. And with the same logic, you can also search for that specific name. If you press on advanced search, you can basically select the customer name that you put there, and or the customer email or the customer ID, and you search across all of that. Now, why this is relevant? Because one major item we are developing, it's a long shot, but it's something that I want to mention, is a way to provide the user the possibility to create their own dashboard with sort of widgets of grouping entities, cross-agent, cross-sites. For instance, if you want to monitor the temperature of all the rack room of your specific kind of customer that you mentioned, like a retail shop or one of the franchisee, you will be able to do that with a single, let's say, widget in the main dashboard. So you have always an overview of the temperature across all the sites for that specific customer for the rack room. That's one of the things. It's very long shot, so it's probably something coming by the end of the year. But going toward
you just brought up something that I think is important for a lot of our customers to know too. And I didn't go into details about this. I talked a little bit about eyes and SNMP sensors, but one thing I didn't do is go into detail. So if I can just take a quick minute to tell everybody this. So in this example, I've got a Vertiv temperature sensor. So this is commonly used in server rooms. So here what you can do. In fact, let me show you how you set this up. Let's say I wanted to add an SNMP sensor. This is something new that the team did with just within the last month. But let's say I wanted to type the word temp here. Because we have the MIBs associated with these devices and many, many other devices out there, we can actually do a search for a particular keyword, and we'll bring up all the OIDs that are associated with this particular device, and we'll show it on the screen. We then can look at, we can narrow it down. In fact, I think if I look at this particular one, right, I just added it again, right? So now I have another one. But now when we go back, you'll see that you can have these sensors associated to this particular device, okay? And then when I go to, after a certain amount of time, one of the things that we've done is added a historical graphing of this. So not only can I set an alert based on a particular value of these systems, but I also can look at the historical view and see what's changed over time. Giancarlo, I probably need to find a way to roll this into our demos that we do, but this is a really cool feature that we have now. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Thanks. Go ahead.
No problem, no problem. One thing, okay, so yeah, that's basically the starting point. Now, once we have those information, I would recommend to look in the future how these widgets in the dashboard will work. But going very closer to the future, we mentioned about new integrations with SynchroMSP. We just had a few days ago fresh service. I just realized that you were showing the integration with the ticketing system, and that's very new one. And SynchroMSP is coming soon, and we will add ServiceNow on the roadmap, Jira on the roadmap as well. In terms of other kind of integrations, you also showed, JB, the configuration management part, where users can start monitoring or doing backup of the configuration of managed switches. And we now support Cisco, we now support Luxor, and we will support other brands of switches. But what's next there is that we are looking at how creating a backup of the configuration file of firewall devices. And WatchGuard, SonicWall, and FortiGate will be the 3 on our list. And this will be available soon. In the next 3 weeks, I would say. One of these 3 will be out as supported in production already.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to have the firewall support in there, Giancarlo. I think that's been a requested feature quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know that that's coming in the very near future.
Yeah. And now the last thing I want to mention, actually there are a few things. A couple of things I want to mention is visibility of information that are already available in Domotz. Now, for historical users, whoever used Domotz since a while, they know, and the JB showed how they can remote connect to devices. Now you select the switch and you can jump into the port 443, port 80, or SSH into that specific device. This will be soon available as a direct link from the main dashboard. So where you see the VPN on demand, which is a way to create a VPN to the remote site, there will be a tab that lists all the possible remote connection that you can do against that specific site, and actually against those specific devices in that site.
Yeah.
And the other thing, still related to visibility of what we already offer to the Domotz user. We do scan the network continuously. We do scan the network every 30 seconds. We do identify devices as soon as they come online. From a certain point of view, this is like a security feature. You can identify if there is a rogue device or a new device, unexpected device coming up to the network. So what we are going to add here, and you see the new device discovery is an alert you can set here. So you can be notified via email about that. But in the same way, you have the list of all the TCP open ports that we discover, or this history of UPnP port forwarding that was there. We will add also the visibility on the latest device registered on or discovered on the platform, which means on Monday morning, I can see, okay, during the weekend, these 3 devices show up on my network or on my customer's network. This is something coming very, very soon. And the last thing I want to mention, also coming probably by the end of September, especially to some selected customers, we will release. This is a big one, so we will release probably in a beta version the first week or so. It is an integration with the single sign-on system, something like Microsoft AD or Okta. So we have been asked about those integrations a lot, so we are integrating with those systems very, very soon.
I think that Giancarlo will be really powerful, right? Because we know that a lot of our service providers are dealing with clients that have to manage single sign-on systems, and being able to associate your team members or field operators to those types of systems are going to be great. I mean, we definitely pride ourselves on being a secure system, right? Going between the agent and the cloud, and then also the cloud back into the applications. Everything's secured, everything is encrypted. We take advantage of things like 2FA, right? Two-factor authentication. But I think just having services like single sign-on is going to even help more so, helping keep your systems and your client systems more secure. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and in the same area, in the login, let's say the login area, the login topic, one thing which might be worth to mention is that you showed here in this view that you can see if your team members or part of your team use the two-factor authentication or not. We will soon make the team master not only aware of which one of his team member or collaborator is using the two-factor authentication, but we will make sure that he is allowed to force the collaborator to enable the two-factor authentication when they log in. So this will be also very soon. I mean, we really understand that Domotz is so powerful that you need to make sure that your account is secure enough, and your collaborator account as well.
Yeah, good. Well, Giancarlo, we're at the top of our hour. I definitely want to, I know you covered the Q&A at the same time, so I think this is great. By all means, please send us feedback. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know things that we can do better. I invite you guys to email support@domotz.com. Both Giancarlo and I watch the questions and the comments that come in there. If you have any sales related questions, by all means, reach out to sales@domotz.com. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And we look forward to speaking to you guys again sometime soon. Have a great day. Thank you.